We are back with Sue Lefebvre. Is that right?
Lefebvre.
Lefebvre. My French is not up to par.
Well,
She is the author, as I had mentioned, of No More Deaths, Humanitarian Aid is Never a Crime, Saving Lives of Migrants. And we're so grateful to have you with us today, Sue. This has been an honor. I want to jump right in and ask you our first question. You've spent a good portion of probably more than 20 years taking up the mantle of the migrant crisis. Your compendium is a detailed account of the history of No More Deaths. So can you briefly educate all of us that are watching this video right now how No More Deaths started?
Well, it's a story.
Yeah.
In the early 1980s, refugees from Central America began showing up at the churches in Tucson, particularly, seeking asylum. Among the pastors there was a growing awareness of the terror taking place in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Some of it stimulated by U.S. government intervention into those countries. Death squads were killing teachers, union organizers, church people, and others. They were also conscripting children to be part of their gangs. Eventually, a network was established through Mexico, which allowed these people to travel north to get to the United States. Church workers in Mexico and here helped them along the way. And in 1986, 11 people were charged in Arizona Arizona and Mexico, were charged with crimes of harboring, smuggling, transporting, conspiring, and other crimes associated with migrant traffic. 8 of those people were found guilty, including Wendy Lewin, whose family was from Church of the Beatitudes.
Oh.
But they were later granted probation. Years went by and the religious folks once again began to receive visitors from the South, this time mostly from Mexico. People were aware of deaths in the desert, but when they learned of a woman named Elisama, whose baby died in her lap after taking the last drink of water they had, they began to mobilize.
Wow.
Way back in the 70s, a group in Tucson called the Monzo Council was working with migrants, and they often bailed them out of detention while they waited for cases to come to court. But in 2000, people from Monzo and from Sanctuary and many others first founded Humane Borders, which puts out water tanks along the border. At one point, they had about 100. Now they have about 85. And in 2002, they founded Tucson Samaritans to take doctors and Spanish speakers into the desert to help those they found. Finally, in 2004, a group of 60 people gathered at Southside Presbyterian Church and started No More Deaths. Their goal was to be in the desert 24/7.
Wow.
So it was an evolution, and as the crisis was growing, more and more people, especially in Tucson, but also all along the border, were responding to the need.
Wow. I know that when I first opened your book, the very first graphic that I watched or saw was a very important graphic that was impactful, and I was hoping that you would share that with everyone.
Well, there have been people in Southern Arizona who have been working with the medical examiner's office and also plotting the deaths themselves. And so they put out a monthly graphic, and that'll come with what I send to you.
Oh, nice. Okay.
The list of the deaths per year. And
wow.
So this map is an accumulation through, 2019 of the deaths in Southern Arizona desert. Now the number is up over 3,000. And that's just remains that have been found. We think that there were probably 3 to 10 times as many people have died as we have found remains in the desert.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I had no idea. Wow.
And I was just reading an article by a man named Ryan Devereaux, who writes for The Intercept, and he reports from No More Deaths and other sources that they're finding fresh remains, whereas in the past they found a lot that had been out there for years.
Oh.
So these remains they're finding now have been there from 6 to 8 months rather than years.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I wonder why.
Well, there are just so many that are coming, and they're not prepared for the weather that they find and the length of the trip.
Yeah, exactly. So, is there a particular story that stands out in your mind of a time, maybe that No More Deaths showed what making love real meant in a tangible, practical way with another human being?
Well, I'll tell you Jean's favorite story.
Oh, I'd love it.
Oh, I thought I had it marked. Well, it's called Annie's Story.
Uh-huh.
No, it isn't. The 3 angels. Annie's Story is another one. Jean, my husband, and Jennifer and Annie were hiking in the desert in southern Arizona. And they came, Annie was calling out, "Tenemos agua, tenemos comida." We have water, we have food. Somos de la iglesia. We are from the church. And suddenly someone popped up out of the grass, and it was a young woman. And her name was Aurora. And after they visited for a while, Annie's a very proficient Spanish speaker. Mm-hmm. And after she visited with them for a while, the mother waved behind her, and 2 little girls came out. And let me see, they were Cynthia and Vanessa. And they were desperate. The migrants travel in groups with a coyote who leads them. And this mother and the 2 children just couldn't keep up. So they had dropped behind. The coyote had taken them to Apache Lake and well, where he knew that the humanitarians were leaving water. So, and also he figured that somebody would come and find them there, which was pretty darn nice of the coyote.
I was going to say, wow.
So when Jean and Annie and Jennifer came across them, they weren't in too bad a shape, but they'd been waiting. And she said, "I've been waiting and waiting and praying for an angel, and 3 angels came." So she equated them with angels.
Oh, wow.
The text that Jean puts with that is, "Let brotherly love continue. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." And
that's beautiful.
His point is that they transform our lives as we are doing things that we think can be helpful to them on their journey, that because of their love and dedication, our lives are transformed.
Isn't that beautiful? Wow. Wow, that's a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that, Sue. Considering all the bureaucracy and SB 1070 that surrounded this issue, what challenges would you say are still facing the humanitarian organizations and their volunteers today even?
Well, one thing that we've learned is that migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers are still coming. There was a kind of a lull, and if you'll see in that graphic that the numbers of deaths go down, and there's a correlation between the numbers of arrests and the number of deaths. According to the ME in Tucson, this year they've logged 181 deaths. And the last time the number was anywhere close to this was in 2013 when there were 188 deaths.
Oh, wow.
The highest number has been 244, and that was in 2010. That was the peak. But advocates worry that we'll get close to that number again this year, given that there's another couple of months left in the year.
Wow.
We've also, and that continues to be a challenge, how to meet that ebb and flow of people who are out there and where they are.
Right.
We've also learned that government harassment never ends. Our volunteers went to trial in 2005 and 2009, but following the dismissal of Dan Millis's case in the Ninth Circuit Court, the other charges for the other people were dropped, and we had 8 years free from prosecution.
What kind of charges? I'm sorry, Sue, to interrupt, but what kind of charges?
Well, Dan Millis was charged with littering on the Buenos Aires Wildlife Refuge.
Oh,
and really? his case, well, they said, they said that full bottles of water were litter.
Oh, wow.
And he said, we think of them as humanitarian necessity, for people who need the water.
Right.
And then shortly after that, a man named Walt Staten was arrested. And Jean, is that a UCC church that Walt was serving in? Oh, Walt Staten had been moved from Tucson and was in Phoenix and has been serving in a UUA church, a Unitarian Universalist church here in Phoenix. And now he's gone on to go into the chaplaincy. But the two of them were arrested, and Walt's charge was knowingly littering because he knew about the previous case. So he deliberately did it. But his case was dropped after Dan's was. But then in 2017, the government decided that we'd had too much free time, and 9 volunteers in the Ajo area were arrested. 4 of them their charges were dismissed, and 4 of them pled guilty to a civil offense and were charged $250 each. Those were the first guilties that we've had out of 20 or more cases in the past 20 years. So, but the last one was Dr. Scott Warren. I don't know if some of you people in the church, I have seen it in the newspaper or on the news. He was acquitted last November. He had several trials, and the final one was November 12th of 2019. And he used a religious defense, saying that his faith compelled him to help people. And he has a very strong religious feeling around the people who had died, who had lost their lives.
Yeah.
He was, in fact, helping 2 Central American men who had come up through Sonoita and arrived in Ajo. And a woman in Ajo had let No More Deaths and Samaritans and Humane Borders, everybody who was there, even a couple of humanitarian groups from California were working in that area. And they used that house called the Barn as a place for people to rest and get some food and, have a plate of scrambled eggs or something.
Yeah.
Kitchen in it and some cots and so on. And Scott was caught there with those 2 men from Central America. And that's when the Border Patrol arrested him. So these things are continuing.
Right. No, this is it's a frustrating situation.
Yeah. In the last couple of months, our main camp at Arivaca has been raided twice.
Oh.
They're just right on top of us.
So I guess with all that's happened and all that you have seen and witnessed, what would you say is some of the things that No More Deaths learned along the way, considering their nonviolent approach?
Well, our approach really has not changed because it works.
Yeah.
The nonviolence, we train people to be respectful of the Border Patrol and of the fish and wildlife people that we encounter in our work. And it's kind of hard for them to deal with that. In camp, there's a mountain up behind the camp in Arivaca, and people go up, take food up there to the Border Patrol as they're sitting there observing the camp.
Really?
And you know, that sort of thing, where we try not to view them as the enemy, but rather as a group to communicate with and negotiate with at the higher levels. I think since these recent trials, I think the volunteers are a little more wary of what they say and what they do, either when they encounter Border Patrol or in sending out emails or messages or statements. They're very circumspect in how they do that.
Oh, sure.
But No More Deaths subscribes to a philosophy called civil initiative that was developed during the sanctuary movement. And it calls for openness and transparency and dealing with other people as people and not as things or adversaries. And it encourages us to stay in dialogue with the people that we're working with.
Communication, yeah, for sure, is the key here.
Yeah.
Well,
then in that respect, nonviolence, we and the migrants are the only ones out there in the desert who are not carrying guns. They're the ranchers. Right. The ranchers, they're the militia, Minutemen. Sometimes the coyotes are carrying guns.
Oh, right.
So there are many ways that you can get into trouble. Border Patrol carries guns. You know, all these different factions are carrying guns out there, except for us and the migrants. So that's our approach is nonviolent, and sometimes there's quite a bit of respect for that on the part of Border Patrol. Other times not so much. Yeah. But everybody knows that we're not out there to harm anyone.
What is the span? I'm thinking about that, like No More Deaths. Primarily, do they focus around like Nogales, or is it the entire width of Arizona?
It's just expanding as the need grows.
Yeah.
Part of the civil initiative is to respond to the needs. And we started out in Tucson, and then in 2005, a woman named Marietta Valet and a couple of other people from the Samaritans were in Nogales, and they realized how many people were being sent back to Nogales and dropped off. And so we began to work there with the local groups. There's a Comodore, which is a kitchen that's right across the border, and we support them. That's run by the Catholic Diocese of New Mexico, Arizona, and Sonora.
Oh, wow.
So then we learned that there was work happening in Naco and Douglas right along the border. So it's just expanded. We became part of those efforts in Naco and Douglas. And now we work with Sassabee. We've been in a little town called Lukeville for a long time, but now we're doing more work with Lukeville. And And we didn't used to be in Ajo. We were to the east of that, but the migrants began moving toward Ajo. So that's when Scott began working there, and the Samaritans were the first ones who went to Ajo, and then they brought us along.
Wow.
And so it's just like Topsy, it just grows and grows.
Depending on how they're migrating and coming across.
And fortunately, the trials have been a magnet for money and volunteers. Every time the government goes after us, the people who are interested in what's happening at the border respond.
Nice.
So it makes it possible for us to go where we see that we're needed.
Yeah. Okay, so what would you say maybe is the most important or tangible thing that individuals watching our video right now can do to help no more deaths or the migrant crisis in general?
Well, first I would say stay informed. Read the articles in the newspaper. Watch your television about different things that are happening. And I have a list of things here. Go to the UCC website, Standing on the Side of Love.
Nice, yes.
Justice Arm. And they've been to Ajo. They've worked with the local people and had
Have they? Nice.
Oh, that's Unitarian? Oh, I'm sorry. I keep getting the UUAs and the UUCCs mixed up. Okay, that's a great website under the Unitarian Universalist Association, Standing on the Side of Love.
Okay.
My 88-year-old husband is coaching my 85-year-old self. Thank goodness he's there. Anyway, go to the websites of other major denominations. Yeah. Check out a group called Tias y Abuelas in Southern Texas. You can go to Facebook and find them. And they're doing lots of interesting work in Southern Texas. Follow the breadcrumbs. Then I want to mention a book by Jacob Soboroff. He works for MSNBC and has written a book called Separated. And it gives the most recent information, well, up till 2018 or 19, I guess, about the children. He found himself in McAllen, Texas, when it was learned that all the children were being kept by the administration.
Right.
Yeah, support local efforts. There's a place called the Restoration House that's doing things. And then what was the one that you mentioned? Oh, Family Promise. Well, I don't know if you have many migrants that are part of Family Promise. Those are mostly homeless people, I think.
Know. Right, yeah. But, it could be. But, yeah, just being aware, I think, is most important. And spreading the word.
Local churches are doing a lot of work. James Pennington at First UCC. There's Congregational. That's not in the New Age. Shadow Rock has been very active, although they've stepped back a bit during 2020. In Tucson, there's a Rincon United Church of Christ, and Del McCormick is the pastor of that church. And they have had hundreds of migrants there at their church that they've cared for. Borderlinks and No More Deaths can take people on trips, probably more so in the spring than now. They're probably not putting people in groups.
Right.
And in Sarita, which is a town between Tucson and Nogales, there's the Good Shepherd United Church of Christ, and Randy Meyer is the pastor there. So any of those people can help people know what's happening on the ground today, and how people can get involved. Also, write your senators and representatives. I know the New Yorker came out with a lengthy article about the issues that need to be taken up in the next administration, and they didn't include immigration. I was just shocked. So, it was the economy and several other important things dealing with COVID and so on. But so we're going to have to work to get immigration back on the agenda.
Right.
Write to Kirsten Sinema, our senator, maybe Mark Kelly if he wins the election. Talk to your friends. And as I mentioned, I know that the Attitudes people in small groups have been studying the book Open Borders. And it gives you a basic understanding of immigration around the world. And it's in hardcover and on Kindle. So look around, dig in, follow the breadcrumbs. Something looks interesting to you, pursue it.
That's great ideas. Thank you, Sue. And I want to just also promote your book. I'm going to put down, if you look down in the details in the description of this video, there'll be a link there to the No More Deaths, Humanitarian Aid is Never a Crime, Saving Lives of Migrants. And you can, of course, go to our website and learn more there. So we appreciate everything that you have shared, all the insights and all the wisdom, Sue. We really, really are so glad to have you part of Making Love Real here at Beatitudes.
Thank you. I'm happy to participate.
Oh, thank you. And also to Jean. Bye. Bye. All right. We'll sign off for now.
Yes.